guns going up and crime coming down? Today's talk is inspired by the liberal gun ban that just passed here can I use that? They threw out like a grenade, just boom, and now 1,500 guns, bam, now illegal. I want to look at some actual facts, some actual statistics about gun violence and homicides here in Canada and the relation, or perhaps lack thereof. But in other news, before we get to that, have you seen that the number of boating accidents here in Canada has increased dramatically all of a sudden?
Do you have any of the rifles on the list?
I did.
Did?
Yeah. Funniest thing, I had a unfortunate boating accident.
Oh. That's, too bad. I think I did, too.
All right. Now, I'm not endorsing this mysterious misplacing of any firearms. They're too valuable. They deserve respect. Some, of course, even take it to extremes, creating tributes of their now illegal firearms.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your...
Alrighty then. We gotta cut that short. There's no telling where that might have gone. But the reality is we had to cut it because of a risk of a copyright strike. I mean, that rendition of I Will Remember You, that was too spot on for some, and they may have mistaken it as me taking it. But I don't know who did that rendition.
Will you remember me?
Okay. That's enough of that. Maybe it needed to be cut because there's only so much the human ear can withstand. Of your singing? No. Only so much Sarah McLachlan. Alright, let's actually get down to some facts now. The claim is that gun bans make us safer. And as such, 1,500 previously restricted and non-restricted firearms are now prohibited. The legislation was pushed through without a democratic vote and was propped up by the tragedy in Nova Scotia. But the firearms, are they the actual problem here? A CBC article on the Nova Scotia shooter and the firearms used mentions that all but one firearm was not even from Canada. It came from the US. They came from the US. So they were smuggled in. What would banning all these guns from Canada have done to stop the illegal smuggling of firearms into Canada? I also don't want to point the fingers across the border. Let's not start pointing fingers at others except for the actual one who did the shooting, of course. The one actually responsible. The blame is sometimes and perhaps oftentimes passed on to the US for the gun violence that we see in Canada. If only the US would get a handle on their gun control. That also really isn't the problem and not a solution that we in Canada ought to be taking if we are pro-gun. Let's not blame the US. Consider an article from the Washington Post on a study of global firearm ownership that points out that over the last 20 years, keep that in mind, over the last 20 years, the number of firearms in the US has grown, ballooned, exploded by about 150 million firearms. 150 million more in the US. Using mainstream media leftist logic, more gun availability means more crime. There must be an abundance of crime. It must be exploding. But when you look at the actual research, consider the Pew research done on facts about crime in the US. It says violent crime has actually been going down steadily in the US. Not up. Guns going up and crime coming down in about the same time, about that 20 years time span, roughly the same amount of time, as the number of guns has increased by somewhere around 150 million, or roughly 65% more guns. So over that same time span, 65% more guns, violent crime has decreased, gone down by 50%. 50%. Half the violent crime when there is 65% more, 150 million more firearms in the US, and half the violent crime. Let that sink in. CNN, they have a article also on the Nova Scotia shooting investigation, and they point out, of the 22 that were killed in this horrific tragedy, wasn't 22 killed by firearms. It was 13, and 9 were killed by fire. Because this individual was also setting fire to homes. Half the people killed in this tragic massacre were killed by fire and not firearms. Should we, I don't know, ban matches or lighters? According to #liberal logic, we better ban whatever was used to start those fires to save all those lives. That's the only solution. We can't crack down on those doing the violence and the arson. We've got to take away the items used to commit those tragedies. Do you know, there's in fact more deaths involving alcohol than firearms. You don't hear the outcry about alcohol, about substances that can influence the mind and inhibit you. Oh, but first, we have an interview here with Mr. Prime Minister Trudeau. Don't worry, there will be a buyback, so you won't lose out on your money. Really, Mr. Trudeau, and where does that money come from that you will be buying these firearms back with? Canadians expect us to keep them safe, and that's what I'm going to do. All right, and that wasn't the question, but let's move on. When can we expect the details on this buyback program? And I believe you've mentioned possibility of grandfathering those who already have these firearms. Well, you see, it is important to keep Canadians safe. So, you went ahead with a plan that you have no idea how much it will cost. The numbers you've thrown out, experts say those are drastically lower than they should be. And many believe it would be more cost effective to spend that money on law enforcement and border security, which has been in need of help. All the while, more people die, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, more people die in incidents involving marijuana, which you, Mr. Prime Minister, legalized just a couple of years ago. More people die in incidents involving marijuana than in incidents involving firearms. Any comment on that, Mr. Trudeau? Any other questions? Yes, any comment on substances that cause impairment being larger threats to Canadian lives than firearms? We seem to have lost the connection there, but unfortunately he won't see these statistics then. I do thank Prime Minister Trudeau for coming on the show. Let's, you and I, take a look at those stats anyway. According to StatsCan, there are less than 270 deaths per year for gun-related incidents. Less than an average of 1 death a day, about 1 every day and a third. Get ready for this. Math. Yes! Alright, keep in mind that these numbers include crimes involving firearms that are already illegal and ones that are obtained illegally. But even if we bump that up a ton to an average of 1 death a day, it still pales in comparison to alcohol-related deaths. According to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, on impaired driving statistics, there's an average of 4 deaths a day due to the effects of alcohol and or drugs. 4. So even if we bump up the firearm statistics, the number of deaths, which was, remember, less than 1 a day, but let's bump it up to 1 a day. There are still 4 times more deaths in Canada due to impaired driving because of alcohol and or drugs. Between 1,250 and 1,500 deaths each year from alcohol and drugs, compared to less than 270 for the scary, dreaded guns. If we really want to ban something, and I'm not saying we do, but if we really want to ban something to save lives, it would make tons more sense to ban alcohol or marijuana, which Justin Trudeau himself legalized in October of 2018. He took the ban off of something that takes more Canadian lives than what he is now banning in the form of firearms. It's mind-boggling. All right. Again, Mothers Against Drunk Driving on cannabis and driving, an article, and this is comparing 2014, so yes, a number of years ago. In 2014, there were 155 gun-related deaths, so we'll compare apples to apples here. Back in 2014, 155 gun-related deaths. In 2014, there were 299 deaths from just alcohol, more than guns. All right, in 2014, there were also 618 deaths from just drugs, more than guns. Now that's a whole range of drugs, but also in the article, it mentions that about 50% of those drug-related deaths were due to marijuana. All right, in 2014, there were 356 deaths from a combination of both drugs and alcohol. So we'll split that in half, just for comparison, and assign half to alcohol, half to drugs. Math coming back. All right, stick with me. These are a lot of numbers, but they help with, if we want to get to the bottom of this. 178 deaths added to the 299 for alcohol gives us a total of 477. 178, that's split in half, added to 618 for drugs gives us a total of 796, but again, remember, only half marijuana, which is what Trudeau legalized, so we'll cut that number in half, and we get 398 deaths for marijuana, 477 for alcohol, 398 for marijuana. And where were guns? 155 in that year. So on their own, alcohol contributes to more than triple, 3 times the deaths as compared with guns. And marijuana, which Trudeau and the Liberals thought was fine and dandy, let's legalize it, that contributes to more than double the deaths as guns. Just to make it clear again, I'm not bringing up these stats to say that we should go back to the 20s and prohibition. I'm making the case that if we were to prohibit something to save lives, it would make more sense to start with other items rather than firearms. What I'm really wanting is more freedom, not cracking down, taking away options for those who follow the law, but let's instead crack down on the ones who are breaking the laws. As we looked at in my last video, we can achieve less crime with fewer gun restrictions and instead harsher punishments for the criminals. You know, the ones breaking the laws. As Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper did this from 2006 to 2015, we saw a decrease in homicides, less deaths, unlike what we see when the Liberals got in and they touted that we're proud of our record in undoing what Harper had done, and despite the fact that there were less deaths under Harper and the Conservatives. I'm saying that there is room for more freedom for you and I, for law-abiding citizens, if we would just enforce more strictly, and you know what? Yes, more harshly, the laws that we already have. For those who do not own a firearm, consider these stats, and I hope they're eye-opening for you. For those who are firearms owners already, hopefully these stats are interesting for you as well. Maybe they're eye-opening as well. Maybe you're pro-gun but didn't even realize that, hey, there's a lot less guns, a lot less deaths, more guns and less deaths than what I thought. Arm yourselves, pun intended, with these facts. Share this video, share this information, combat your liberties being taken away. We can fight with facts by getting rid of ignorance, informing those who don't know any better. If all you hear is what the mainstream media shares, well, no wonder there's major blind spots. We know they don't like guns. So you and I, that's what it comes down to. We need to share this information with those around us, with those we can inform. Law-abiding gun owners. The truth, it's on your side. We just need to share it. Hey, I really do think you should share these facts with others. It would mean a lot if you share this video. It would mean a lot also if you hit the subscription button, hit that like button if you liked it, and you know what? Hit the little bell notification thing as well, because I think that lets you know when dinner's ready. And if you want to check out other videos, I'm not going to stop you. It's a free country. For now.
Pass you by. Weep not for the memories.
I'm pretty sure I said whip not instead of weep not for the memories. Whip not, like it's Slipknot? Maybe it's the Slipknot, whip not rendition of I Will Remember. I will remember.
I will remember you. Will you remember?